Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the live stream that has become a weekly live stream in some ways. It's been a few weeks in a row, so that's always good. Thanks for stopping by once again for the show, and hopefully today it'll be a little less, a little bit longer, maybe. Hopefully I can get through a bunch of questions, and if you have any questions, anything you're thinking about in terms of video gear, anything like that, just let me know and we can get to it. And as always, if I don't get to your question, then feel free to email me afterwards. After I do any of these shows, I always get a bunch of emails in my inbox, and I do try to reply to everyone as fast as I can. So if you've got any questions, just throw them in the Q&A or send an email, john@heretorecord.com, or you can go onto the website and send a message through that instead. So let me know where you're watching from. It's always nice to know where people are tuning in from all over the world. And let's see, if you have any questions specifically, then do try to add here to record on there so they can pop up a little bit easier for me to see. But otherwise, I'll hopefully get to them anyway. I guess there's not been any news this week, any fun updates from in terms of equipment and releases that I've seen anyway. Maybe you saw something that I happened to miss, but I haven't seen anything groundbreaking this week. A couple of things from me is that I was disappointed that there wouldn't be a Blackmagic weekly stream this week. They were going for 2 weeks in a row, so I was hoping that they would go for a third and maybe release some new ATEMs or something like that, but sadly they didn't. Maybe they'll release something soon, or maybe that's their release schedule done for now. So that was a bit disappointing, but what can you do? Otherwise, I bought a new camera for the live streaming in the channel this week, the Panasonic G7. I'm gonna mount that up here on the roof and let it stay here and get a nice overhead shot whenever I'm showing off gear. So I'll show you around the gear I'm using today a little bit, and then we can talk about upcoming cameras and stuff like that. So if you take a look at the overhead shot, it's much cleaner this week than it was last week actually. Last week I had a bunch more gear on the table, but I decided to pull back a little this week, and the best thing about the gear I'm using this week is that there's no fans. Last week I was using the ATEM Television Studio HD and the Hyperdeck as well, and they're pretty loud fans on both of them. That would be something to fix for the future, is a quieter fan setup. But anyway, this is the gear. I'm using the ATEM Mini Pro this week as the streaming and switching hardware, and I've got the multi-view screen just over there out of shot. You can just about see it, and I have my graphics overlay on this screen again this week, so I can read things like comments, and it's really nice to have an extra monitor just to take a look at some things. And then over here you'll see something I mentioned last week, which was the Blackmagic ATEM 1ME advanced panel. And something I've been wondering is, can it control the ATEM Mini? And turns out it definitely can. Is this the definition of overkill? Yes, absolutely it is. But since it was here, and I thought I'd just crack it out and see if it works with the ATEM Mini, and I mean, of course it does. I've got my preview here and I've got my program there, only on those 4 buttons, of course. And then I guess you can't do certain things. I haven't really looked into it, but I doubt you can start and stop streaming and stuff like that. But otherwise, it's all the way you would expect it to be, and it just connects over the IP very easily, and you can control the ATEM with it. So it works nicely. Would I recommend buying advanced panel to control your ATEM Mini or ATEM Mini Pro? No, I wouldn't recommend that. But what it does give you is the option to turn the downstream keyer on and off, and a few of the buttons that you can't actually get to on the ATEM Mini. But still, that's not a good enough reason to do it. Yeah, there's a very good comment from Media Outlaws. Says, if you've got it, flaunt it, and that is exactly what's happening here. I have it, so I may as well crack it out and use it and see how well it works. And of course, it works well. So that's the very simple gear on the desk. Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K is the main camera on the stream today, and then above overhead is the it's actually the GH5 up there, getting the top shot. Actually, just real quickly while I'm on this, Glenn asked how you mounted the overhead camera. We actually have a you can. No, I guess you can't see it here on this shot, but there is a lighting bar that goes all the way around the roof for just normal office lighting. So I've just super clamped it up there very easily, up on the top. If it moves, if the light bar moves, because it's not made for this kind of lighting, it's made for literally office lighting. So it's not too secure, but if I don't touch it and it stays still, then it's not going anywhere. But like I mentioned, I got a new camera for this shot, and I'll hopefully have that in action pretty soon, in a week or two, which is the G7, Panasonic G7. That's what I said, right? Because the Blackmagic camera that I'm doing the A camera on, it's actually not really something that's always available. Sometimes it's out on shoots, but the GH5 is my personal camera, so I thought that could become the main camera, and then I can just put a slightly less expensive camera up overhead full time. I'll make sure to strap it up there so it doesn't fall down on top of me, but otherwise I'm happy to just leave that up there. I'm not so happy to leave the GH5 up there all the time because I think it's a waste of a pretty expensive camera, relatively speaking expensive camera. So I'm going to get the G7 in and put it up there instead, and that'll be nice to have fixed up there. Before I was using the XA10 or something last week, and the quality out of that is just not, it's good whenever it's paired with other Canon XA cameras. I think I was more than happy with it. But when you put it side by side with something like the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, the difference is just night and day. And cutting between those two cameras, I just wasn't happy with. But cutting between these two cameras, I'm much more comfortable with. And cutting between two Panasonic cameras, I'll be extra happy to do, because they will be pretty similar to each other in many ways. I haven't really spent much time trying to make these two cameras look alike, because they're getting slightly different shots, but whenever I get the other Panasonic, I'll do my best to match them a little bit better. So I asked where you're coming from, and let me just backtrack on that a little. Jared, you said, all right. I just thought I'd throw that in there. But hello from the Philippines, that's Glenn. Portugal, where else do we have? The UK, John, welcome. Israel, excellent, welcome. More UK, New York, loads of places. Florida, excellent. Thanks for stopping by and spending your Thursday morning, evening, night, whatever time it is with you. I really do appreciate it. And there's some more people popping in now, and welcome. Again, if you have any questions, just make sure you include @here to record, and I'll get to those a little bit later. Otherwise, I don't want to make a habit of every week talking about features in H2R Graphics that are not yet available. So I'm going to try my best not to do that constantly. But it's fun to have been developing. I'm just going to turn this off for a second. It's fun to develop the features. So therefore, it's exciting to tell you about the features that I'm developing. So I just wanted to talk about chat real quickly, and then in the next, hopefully within the next week or so, all these features will be available for folks anyway, so it's not so bad that I'm talking about them constantly. But in the chat window, a couple of new features that I've added, and these have been beta tested and will continue to be beta tested soon, so it's stuff that's soon to come out. Let's see, what's new from last time? Yeah, I've got some new privacy settings in here where I'm able to show certain things and not show other things. Some people have asked for this kind of stuff, which is great. They've got certain use cases that I didn't know about, and they want to just show the text comment and not show people's faces and not show people's full names or names at all. So I want to give people as much control over that as possible. So if I show you a comment real quickly, let's look at one that we already looked at here. Yeah, Jared, all right. You can see Jared's face and name and comment, of course. But now I can turn off their, it doesn't affect it right away, but you'll see in a second. I can turn off their profile image and I can hide their username. And now if I just trigger that again, that's a weird little issue. But anyway, you can now see that it just says where it's coming from and there's no picture anymore. So I wanted people to have full control over that stuff. And you can say you only want to show their first name and it'll do its best to only show the first name. So that's a small little update. And something that I'm also trying out for this stream specifically is an auto refresh of the comments, which will be a really nice thing to have. So every 10 seconds right now, this will auto refresh. Has 10 seconds passed yet? No, but there we go. So it just, you probably can just about see that on the stream, but every 10 seconds this will auto refresh and pull in the new comments. That's something that people ask for immediately when I showed this off. So I know that'll be something that people will be very happy to see released in a future version. So that's a quick look at what's coming up in H2R Graphics. Again, if you want to get your hands on these features early, then come into the Discord. You'll find a link below this video. Join the beta testers channel, and I've been posting 4 builds this week, and I'll continue to post one more maybe before hopefully pushing out a full version. If you watched Aaron Parecki's stream on Tuesday, you'll see that he had some issues due to a beta build. So it is a bleeding edge beta build, and if you have some issues, then you go ahead and use it live. But if things break, then please forgive me and test it out before you go live as well. That would be the best thing to do. So that's a quick look at that. And the image thing I showed off a little bit last week. I had some problems with that, but otherwise I'm able to show images. I showed one at the start of the stream, which was that one. And that's all through H2R Graphics, so coming soon. Let me see then. What else do we have here? Yeah, so I did some testing, just a final update on the H2R Graphics actually. I did some testing to see if the auto refresh thing would make sense, and if it refreshes every 10 seconds, then you're able to use it for about 2 hours before you run out of those credits that I've talked about before. So I might have some options about how frequent you would like to refresh the chat. 10 seconds is, I think, a bit fast because it takes me more than 10 seconds to answer a question, probably. So maybe there'll be options like 1 minute or something like that. But if I was to refresh every 10 seconds, then I could stream for about 2 hours per day, and I wouldn't have any issues with the API stuff. So that's pretty good. Yeah, Doug, I've just caught your last comment there, and he said 30 seconds would be ideal for him, which is exactly right. I was testing yesterday with, I'm testing now with 10 seconds like I said, and I've tested yesterday with 1 minute, which I thought was a bit too long. So yeah, maybe 30 seconds would be pretty nice. And in that case, you could stream for a lot longer every single day, and you wouldn't have any issues. So auto is definitely coming because I was sick of pressing the refresh button. So I can only imagine that other people were as well. So that's good to have that coming on its way. And you could stream for about 24 hours non-stop if I refreshed every 1 minute. So if you're doing an all-day stream, then every minute would be perfectly fine. So I did see some questions coming in there, and I'm going to try and go to the top and answer questions as they came. So Griff Bros, last week you asked about the copyright, and it keeps happening. So oh yeah, okay. So you asked last week, what do you do if YouTube just keeps giving you a copyright strike, or not strikes, but notices whenever you're trying to do some live stream of music? So now you just stream to Twitch instead and find it easier. I mean, that is a solution. The good thing about having so many options to stream to is that if one of them is not quite working well for you, then just go somewhere else. And and there are more than enough streaming services out there to do that. So unfortunately, sometimes the answer is just try it somewhere else and see if it works. And Twitch is free as well, so stick to another free service that doesn't have the same issues just yet anyway. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Can two 15 feet HDMI cables work for the ATEM Mini? 15 feet, this is me as I search 15 feet in meters. Oh, yeah, definitely. We have a couple, that's about 4.5 meters. We have a couple, I'm actually using two 5-meter cables right now for this. Each camera is running in 5-meter cable. In fact, the one overhead is way too far away to not use a long cable. So to answer your question, yes. But I would look into what ones, single directional ones seem to work well for me. These ones, they have a bigger side that says TV on them, and then you know which side you should plug into the ATEM Mini or other things. So I don't know if that's the term for them, but the ones we use are one directional. So I would try and look for those if you're having any issues with shorter ones. And some people say longer fiber, HDMI cables with fiber inside of them as well. You can go a lot longer on those. I think someone's actually already saying that, but I'll get to that in a second. So yes, 5 meters, definitely, or what did you say, 15 feet? But beyond that, I always said don't use those kind of cables, but because I always recommended people go to SDI instead. But now that we're using ATEM Mini Pro and things that are only HDMI, then it seems like there's plenty of long HDMI cables to choose from, which is really good. In fact, it just caught my eye there. Jared says, we use 60-meter cables all day long. So there you go. You can definitely use 15 feet, no bother. Next question up, let me see. Julian asks, can we separate audio in 2 channels in the ATEM Mini Pro, but each channel can be stereo separately? No, you can separate channels into 2 mono channels, so each of the channels become 2 mono channels, but then they would be mono channels each. It wouldn't be stereo. So yes, you can separate, but no, they would not be stereo channels that turn into stereo channels. They would be 2 mono channels. Hope that answers your question. Let me see. Here's a good question. Mad Titan Bathos, I guess that's the character. Do you anticipate filming conferences with 4K cameras becoming an industry standard in the next few years? Unfortunately, I would say no. Well, okay, maybe I should take that back. You might use a lot of 4K cameras to get conferences and things captured, but I'd be very surprised if you deliver very many in 4K. I haven't personally ever delivered much anything in 4K. A couple of really short 1 to 2 minute videos, but mostly it's been HD all the way, and certainly never a long form thing. I wanted to. I looked into the pricing of 4K stuff, and it does get cheaper and cheaper, and it would be more and more affordable every month. It becomes more and more affordable. But I think the reason that I stepped away from it is because of all the other infrastructure you'll need. So not only do you need the cameras, but you would need the recorders. And then you get home and you have all this footage, maybe ISO'd per camera, and you have to do something with it. For me, it never made sense because it was just this growing overhead that I never wanted to go near 4K. But I always wanted to get that image quality. So I always looked into it, and I was always thinking, okay, maybe the next camera can be a 4K camera, and maybe. But once you buy one, you kind of want to buy the whole set. So I don't think it'll be a huge thing, and I don't think many people will watch it either in 4K. It'll probably watch it in 1080p or less on YouTube or whatever you deliver it. So I know I'm making some blanket statements. I don't know what people will watch it on, but I struggle in my home broadband to watch 1080 60. Never mind a 4K video. So you never know. I'm making a mess. Zach asks, thoughts on the Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro 12K? I did mention it a little last week because I streamed right after that announcement last week. I mean, it's cool. It's what everyone's been talking about for the last week, this brand new camera, but it's certainly not aimed at someone like me doing live streaming and doing these kind of, I mean, I would never have it in this scenario, and I would never use it at an event because it's not the kind of stuff that I'm going for. So I guess I'm barely touched into 4K stuff, and never mind like 6K and up to 12K. It's way up there for me. I'm still excited about some of the 4K cameras that were released a few years ago, so it's a long way away from me. Let me see. Will you be implementing key fill for the Blackmagic DeckLink in H2R Graphics? I have looked into it, and I would like to do that. It's just a time thing. I have a long list of things that I want to add to H2R Graphics. And I have a long list, and I have a tiny bit of time every day/week to do stuff. So when I look at the tasks that I want to grab and take hold of, I usually grab the small manageable ones. And I've looked into the DeckLink stuff, and for my knowledge and current use case, it becomes a big task. So I just haven't started chunking away at it yet. And it's been asked by a few people, but not asked by as many as people who request things like maybe Facebook for YouTube chat, you know. So it's just a priority thing. But it would be great to have it in there. In fact, I shot a video today, on location video I shot today. I wasn't on location today, I shot like the A-roll stuff here in the office, but about how I use vMix and key fill with the Blackmagic device to do graphics and all that stuff. So that'll be coming out soon. And the key fill worked really well with that device, so I'd love to get the UltraStudio HD Mini working with H2R Graphics. But yeah, it's just a time thing, and I hope to get there eventually. Let me see. What else did people ask? They're coming in, and I'm just trying to keep up with the comments, but I appreciate them. Keep it on coming in. I love it. So, Rick asks, and this is about H2R Graphics. I have been stuck in a seemingly endless loop compromising an audit from Google after applying for my Google API key. Any comments? You shouldn't have to apply for anything from Google. If you want to get a Google API key and you follow the document, then you should just get a key almost instantly, excuse me. And then you just use that key and it gives you 10,000 credits per day. So you shouldn't need to go through an audit process. To go through an audit process, you want to get your credit limit higher than 10,000 per day. And in that case, you will probably need an application that you are developing and that you can change in order to comply with their limits. So if you're applying for a bigger allowance, it doesn't surprise me that they would say no to that unless you were the developer of an application who was working on, oh, someone just jumped in and has a lot to say. Yeah, so unless you're a developer of an application, then I'm so distracted by a million comments there. Anyway, yes, you don't need to apply for an audit from Google because I guess they have nothing to audit because you're not working on an application yourself. So maybe that helps. If it doesn't, then just send me a message about this and I can chat to you a bit more about it afterwards. And we have a few people coming in with some endless comments here, so I'm just trying to deal with it as I chit chat with you. It's always fun. There we go. Okay, let's see how it goes. Anyway, next question. This may be a stupid question, but how exactly are you doing Luma keying? Can you do it on the ATEM Mini Pro? You know, that was actually a thing I was going to discuss in this video. So maybe I can show you that now, and we'll come back to questions a little bit later, as I still try to delete people from the YouTube chat. Anyway, let's show that. Let me take this DSK off air, and I can show you the ATEM Mini, or the ATEM software control. So you can see that. So yes, I am using Luma key for all of the keying I'm doing. You can see here it's a black background instead of a green screen, or not green screen, but a green one. So that's what I'm using for this. For the purposes of this video, it's black, so I can just do a Luma key on that instead of doing a chroma key, which works really well with the downstream keyer. And then over on the ATEM software control, in the downstream key section, I'm just setting the fill and the key source to the same thing, which is camera 4. I know it's called camera 4 here, but it's input 4, and that's the one that I'm using for the purposes of this this video. That's what the extended display is coming in at on the ATEM Mini. So I have camera 4 there, and then I'm using this pre-multiplied key to, or actually, sorry, I'm not using the pre-multiplied key because that goes a bit weird. Instead, I'm just setting the clip and gain the way I want them, because it actually helps a lot to just dial it in. If I can show you that by turning this back on again, maybe. Did I turn it back on again? Yes. Oh yeah. So I'll just show you this camera real quickly. So now you can see there, it's sort of keyed out the background, and then I can I play with these settings a little. I'm just going to remember that that's on 10, but I can play with these settings a little to get the key just right. And what did I say, 10? So that's what I recommend you do. I find that it does change whenever I'm moving between ATEMs and stuff. Oh, let me show you my face again. It's always fun when you undo things that you set up before. No, I do like to test every time just to make sure it looks good with things on the screen and without things, because I moved from ATEM Mini to the ATEM Television Studio last week, and I don't know, sometimes I forget settings or things move, so it's good to just test this stuff, make sure pictures look good, make sure lower thirds are keying out properly. So I hope that explains what I'm up to over here, and then we'll get back to questions right now. Let me see. Kenneth wants to know, how are you making this animation showing selected comments on your feed? H2R Graphics, that's a project that I've been working on for, it's been a long time, 1.5 years now, I guess. And recently I put YouTube comments in there, so check it out. HereToRecord.com/graphics. The website is below this, and you can just look in the apps section and you can do all this stuff. Let me see. John asks, oh, that's an interesting photo. John, is that a weird key, or is that, I guess that's what your photo looks like. Cool. Anyway, any thoughts on streaming from the DJI Osmo Pocket? Would Apple TV or Chromecast be an option? You know what? I have no idea. I don't like to give answers to things that I don't know. So livevideotech.today would be a great place to go and ask this. There's a forum that Aaron has set up, and you can ask all sorts of questions in there. That would be a good one, because honestly I wouldn't be able to tell you for sure. I know that I haven't really tried the Apple TV or the Chromecast with the Mini Pro just yet, but I know there's some weird HDCP stuff to figure out then, so you need another device and stuff. So I don't know if I would wander down that direction, but if you really want to use this DJI Osmo Pocket, then maybe you'll have to go that way. But ask on the forum for sure. I put my lower thirds up to, let me just get rid of that. There we go. And just a little follow-up on our HDMI discussion before. HDMI length really does depend on the camera. I've tried 5 different cameras and a lot of with the same cables, and I have had 15 meters working fine. Yeah, okay, that's good to know. This is the kind of classic, I bought a cable and it doesn't work, or I bought a cable and it does work and it works for me kind of thing. Because cables are fairly inexpensive, then at least you can buy one and it doesn't work, you maybe can send it back and buy another. It can be a bit potluck-ish, so it's worth getting one and finding if it works, and maybe buying it from somewhere that you can send it back to as well. Let me see. Drew asks, what's the best place to get animated stingers to use with macros and with the ATEM Mini Pro? That's a good question. If you want something that's on your brand, then I would try to make it in like Apple Motion or After Effects or something like that, if you know how to use those pieces of software and if you have access to them, of course. But if you want something specific, I would head that direction and make something yourself, and then render it out and put it in a hyperdeck or something like that. Doug's just followed up saying digital juice for his stingers, so there's an option. I haven't used this kind of stuff because when I'm making stingers, or I guess I haven't really used stingers specifically, but when I'm making things like that, I like to jump into Apple Motion and try to make that kind of stuff myself, because usually it's a very specific event that I'm making an animation for, and then it's easier just to jump in there and get it yourself. I guess that didn't really help much, but maybe it did. Anton says, you've used a few cables from Blue Rigger with Ethernet technology, 100 feet, ATEM Mini, but you've tested them with the ATEM Mini, but you still use SDI for long runs. And yeah, that's a good point. It's still good to run back to SDI. You can just get a box on either end to convert. But it's cool to see the Ethernet technology. That was the term maybe I couldn't quite remember earlier. Got all sorts of fancy names for things. Yeah, so Doug, just to follow up again on the 4K discussion we had, even though you can shoot and switch in 4K, you've never actually had a single client ask for it. And I would not, or sorry, that would not surprise me for 1 second. I think I find a lot of clients are just happy that you're there shooting their videos and delivering stuff to them. That the difference between HD and 4K for them is probably not the most important part. It's that you were there, that you were nice and helpful, and that you delivered what you said you would. So 1080p will be around for a long time, I think. Let me see, more questions. I'm just making my way down here. And the auto refresh of H2R Graphics is working really nicely. I don't have to press the button once, so I think the feature is coming. Lovely. Let's see, you kind of said, any great budget options for the Stream Deck? Now, do you mean alternatives to the Stream Deck on a budget? Because in that case, that's a tough one. I've been using things like OSC, and actually been editing a video at the minute. It's kind of like ways to control your ATEM, and it talks through a bunch of different ways that I've controlled the ATEM over the years. One of them being OSC and MIDI and those kind of things, and you can do those on iPads and Android tablets and things. So if you have a tablet already, then you can probably already do all this stuff. If you don't, then it's probably cheaper to buy a Stream Deck. So I would personally, probably go for the Stream Deck if you can get your hands on one. One of the small ones would be perfectly fine. I think it's a really great device to have. I've used it for so many different things, for vMix, for ATEM, for all sorts of stuff, so it's great to have one around. Big G wants to know if I use 4G for live streaming, and if so, bonded or single, and do you have any tips for a good solution? Yes. Single, no tips. That's my quick answer. My long answer is I've used 4G for streaming, yeah. The first live show I did a month or two ago, yeah, it would be like 2 months ago, I used 4G only for that, and it went okay. But I wouldn't rely on 4G for for too long, personally. In work here, we've done a bunch of 4G stuff, and we've been really happy with it over the last few months. But we're often in like a big city, and there's plenty of 4G coverage, and we sometimes have some antennas and things like that. But that's all single 4G, not any bonded stuff. But at home, I have a couple of antennas that I'm trying to position at the minute and trying to get some better internet coverage at home. So maybe I can report back on how that goes. But tips for a good solution. It's just once you start streaming on 4G, in my experience, purely, it can go really well, or it can just go well for a long time. And again, Doug, you've just caught my eye with a comment that I'm not going to read it all, but 4G LTE is hit or miss, and I found the same. You can have like a 1 hour show and it all runs perfectly on a tiny 4G stick, or you can set up a really complicated antenna system and it stops halfway. So I personally try my best to avoid it where possible, but that's not always possible. Tim says, evening John, I'm in the UK. Blackmagic products are very short supply with long lead times. Is that the same in Sweden? Yes, it seems to be a worldwide issue at the minute. They just can't make enough of them to satisfy the demand. In fact, if you watch Office Hours with Alex Lindsay and the crew over there, they had a Blackmagic person on one of these yesterday, I guess it was, and they were just talking about it's like a barrel that you can never fill, because they're making as many as they can, but they're getting orders for more. So it feels like it'll be a long time before that that equals out again. Maybe they'll have to come up with a new product in the meantime, but it seems like they just can't make enough to get them out the door to people. So I'm going to hold on to my ATEM Mini as long as I can. Otherwise, I would never see the one again. This one is actually still on loan from Blackmagic, and they were kind enough to let me keep it as long as I'm making videos with it, and I'm still making videos with it. So if they're watching this, then let me keep it for a bit longer, please. Thank you. Otherwise, I'd have to buy one, and I don't know how long it would take before I would get it. Alexander asks, well, Alexander says that I really like H2R Graphics. Any plans to include Facebook comments and or Twitter mentions? Twitter mentions is not... Facebook Live, yes, if I can. Twitter mentions, not specifically. It was something I worked on previously for an old project. So it, I kind of wanted to keep like a live-ish vibe in the chat one. So, but I do, if anybody sends me an email with a request, I do put that on my to-do list as soon as I can. So send me an email and I'll put it on there. And actually, I think both of those are already on there, so you don't need to send me an email unless you want to. So yes, those would be great to have. I really would like to have Facebook in there, Facebook chat as well, and we can test that out and see how well that works as well, because I know a lot of people use Facebook for their live streaming, so that would be great to have. Martin says, I assume you're no longer using the Canon XA camcorders. That is correct. I just don't have any current use for them. I mentioned last week I had the XA overhead here getting the top-down shot, and I wasn't happy with the difference between it and this camera, so I'm not really using them anymore. They're just sitting over there in a box, sadly. But I used them a whole lot over the last few years, and they did me very well, and they traveled well with me, so I've been very happy with them. I don't mean to be mean to them anymore, but now that I'm not traveling around, then I don't need to pack light, and because I don't need to pack light, I can use other cameras, and because I'm not trying to shoot people from afar on a stage, then I can use cameras like this and the GH5 and stuff. Let me see. I'm just scrolling past this storm of random comments that popped in there at one point. Let me see. Yeah, Rick, you just followed up on you got your key, but they sent me an email telling me they were auditing me, maybe a statistically random thing. Yeah, I wonder, my plan was never that anyone would use an API key that they generated themselves, that H2R Graphics would take care of all that stuff. And then when I saw the whole credit system thing, the plans changed drastically. So it could be that Google don't really like people doing that, and therefore they saw a little bump in API keys. I mean, obviously it's a huge company. What a small bump that we might make, but it could have just been a statistically random thing. Maybe they'll get in touch with me and tell me that I can't tell people to do that. I don't know. But ideally, I can increase the limit again on mine, and then do this all a bit differently, so nobody has to make an API key. I'm just nervous that that someday they just decide, or actually, the real problem is how much time to give, how often should refreshes happen, and how many people might use the app. And I don't want to hit the point where it just gets flooded and then no one can use it. So I just have to be careful. Julian said, you need a moderator, tell me. That was for the little storm of comments earlier. I appreciate that. I'm too late coming to you, but I appreciate that. What lights are you using there? Zach wants to know. Oh, what lights am I using? I can't see the brand name right now. I think it's called Cam, 2Cam something. I can follow up afterwards. I just have one that's bouncing off a big white thing up here, a big reflector, and then another just over my shoulder getting some other shots. So if you can see a big white box, it's actually just a white reflector. And then there's just one light up there. Lighting is something that I will forever try to improve and forever be unhappy with. So I guess it's kind of like audio. It doesn't leave much, does it? Let me see. DMM Tech asks, what do you think of the use of SRT in vMix? I haven't actually used it yet. I haven't had a need for it yet, so hopefully I can get back to you whenever I use it someday. Paul wants to know, does H2R Graphics work with OBS? The answer is kind of. It was never designed to be working with OBS, but a lot of people have used it with OBS. If you use a window capture, then you can use it with OBS, but it's flaky at best. A future iteration of Here to Record, of H2R Graphics, will hopefully work better with OBS, but it was never my intention to use it with OBS. I designed it for the ATEM, and people continued to use it with the ATEM, and therefore that's what I have been optimizing it for over time. But I would like to optimize it better to work with OBS and vMix in the future. But it does work for both of those. It's just not a seamless experience, I would say. But it does work. It does work. Martin asks, your thoughts on the YoloBox that Aaron reviewed earlier. And if you haven't seen that video, Aaron posted a video, Aaron Parecki, on his YouTube channel today about the YoloBox. Yeah, it's an interesting device. Well, I used to use the Webcaster X2 for live streaming, and at the time I really liked it because I could bring a tiny little device with me. There was no ATEM Mini Pro at the time, so bringing a streaming hardware box was so easy when I brought the Webcaster X2. But upon reflection, now having used the ATEM Mini and things like that, the Webcaster X2 just seemed like such a hassle now. You have to bring an extra monitor with it. It was a really weird Android device that I didn't really like the UI that much. I think my feelings at the time were very positive because it worked really well for my setup. But now, if I was to get it now, it wouldn't really work well for my setup, and it would be a hassle to have. And I worry that the YoloBoxes may be in that category too. So I haven't really, but I haven't had a chance to play with it either. So I think I would have to have a good walkthrough of it. I was chatting with them about maybe getting a review unit, but I just didn't think I had the time right now, so I passed on it for now. But if people want to see it in action more, I mean, Aaron, I'm sure will cover it plenty. But if you want to see it in action more, then just let me know and I can see if I can get my hands on one for sure. Let me see. So, question, how do you get rid of my sync issues? I record but don't stream with the ATEM Mini and using a Behringer XR18 with mic 1 and mic 2 cameras over HDMI and 1 PTZ, and it goes through an SDI converter? That is a good question. I don't know if I can answer that right now. Why don't you send me an email about that and we can troubleshoot some stuff. Because of, I mean, I have access to all those pieces of gear, I think, anyway, so maybe I can see what I can figure out. If you're able to bring everything in over a camera, then that's what I'm usually doing here. Actually, today that's what I'm doing, bringing the audio straight into the camera. So I find sync sort of sorts itself out for the most part. But if you have a bunch of different sources coming in a bunch of different ways, and they're all pointed at a person's face, and it's out of sync, then it could be hard to troubleshoot those. So why don't you send me an email and we can chat a bit more about that. But there are some audio delay features in ATEM Mini Pro, and but I don't think that'll help you for this one. Scrolling on down. Yes, did your ATEM Mini Pro come with a locking power supply? My regular one came with one, but not the Pro. The other Ursa too. Yes, again, the Alex Lindsay's office hours stuff. The guy from Blackmagic Design mentioned this yesterday, or I think it was yesterday. They said that they couldn't get their hands on enough locking power supplies whenever they were trying to ship these out. And rather than wait for locking power supplies to come and delay all the ATEM Mini Pros, then they decided just to ship them with whatever power supplies they could get their hands on. I'm sure those power supplies were rated fine for the ATEM Mini Pro and ATEM Minis, but they just decided to not hold back things just so they could get a screw, instead just ship them out. So, I mean, if you're unhappy with that, I guess you could ask Blackmagic to send you a proper one. I have no idea if they will, but it is nice to have the lock, but it's certainly not a needed thing. You could put a little bit of tape on there maybe or something like that. But I wouldn't have known this other than watching that office hours thing. So it's good to be involved in that and try to keep up to date on all the info. Let me see now. This is something I noticed today. I'm not joining your conversation. I'm joining your conversation a bit late here, but you're getting a darker output via USB-C. I noticed that today. I was trying to use the ATEM Mini Pro with Google Meet, which didn't work well. Things did not go well for me, but otherwise that's a different story. But when it came into the Google Meet on the computer, it was a darker output or darker image than I was seeing here on the screens and stuff. I have no idea why that was, and I'd like to see if I can figure that out. I just didn't have time to today. I'm finally starting to catch up with the questions. Here's a good one. It's something I can't answer really quickly, but best setup for starting to stream in 2020. Unfortunately, I think the answer is a bad one. The best setup to start streaming is the ATEM Mini Pro, I think, if you're just getting started, because it's fairly affordable and you can add all sorts of cameras to it. The unfortunate part is getting one in your hands before the end of 2020. I have no idea if you can do that. So I'm still recommending these to people, but I feel bad because it's hard to get your hands on one, like we discussed there. So the other totally opposite end of the spectrum, which is not necessarily as affordable, but would certainly do you future proofing, would be to go the vMix route. I use vMix a whole lot on all sorts of different streaming things, and it works really well. In fact, I'll probably do some streams about it soon, so if you want to see those, just let me know. But it works really well with all sorts of stuff. So if you've got a PC, sort of gaming PC already lying around, but if you have one or you want to invest in one anyway and you're thinking about doing streaming, then I would go for that area, because vMix is such a good piece of software, and I know they're getting so many users these days, so it's only going to get better over time. So that's what I would say. If you can get ATEM Mini Pro, grab one, and if you can't, consider vMix. I know it's a totally different thing, but I think it's worth it, especially if you're going to do more of this after the next few months or the next few years. You can easily scale up with vMix. Marco, I'm I appreciate you asking about live replayer software, but I have not actually tried it, so I'm going to jump on over if you don't mind. Yeah, Matt says the USB Mini USB out has a different color space than, and you've heard other YouTubers say that. Okay, so then that explains why it looks different. So drastically different was surprising to me today, but I don't know. I think it looked kind of nice. It just didn't look the way I wanted it to look, but I liked how it looked. So, but if it's a different color space, then I guess it makes sense. Rick, just your 2 cents. You like the idea of adding Facebook Live to the chat function. I like the idea too. I think that a lot of people will like that too. Martin, when the world reopens and conferences and events filming returns, are you going to build a flight case for the ATEM Mini Pro? That is a good question. Probably not, because I have used the ATEM Mini Pro on a few gigs. Over the years, I've went up and down on the old building a whole setup at home and bringing that with me versus building pieces and bringing pieces and building it at the venue. And I went back and forth constantly on the best way to do that, actually, because in the early days, I really wanted to bring a box, set it on a table when I got there, plug in 1 or 2 things, and I'm ready to go. But whenever you start putting cameras far away and bringing things like the Stream Deck and all that stuff, you go to this place and you set up your box, but then you still spend hours plugging in all the other stuff. So I started not going for such a built-in ultimate box thing anymore. I just tried to pull back and bring some stuff and assemble when I got there. And then I went back and forth on different ways to do this. I could have made about 10 different videos on my setup of this month for all of the gigs I used to do all over Europe. So to return to your question, would I build an ATEM Mini Pro flight rig? No, I wouldn't. And I actually had a video I shot about this, but I haven't released it yet, of a kind of January 2019 versus January 2020 when I used to bring the ATEM television studio versus January 2020 when I just brought the ATEM Mini Pro. Oh, maybe the Pro wasn't out then, but anyway, you get my point. The gear got so downscaled that I could just bring way less stuff, and I wasn't as worried about, like you can see how tiny this little device is. I wasn't as worried. I could just put this in my backpack and I wouldn't have to build a big rig. In fact, it meant that I could bring way less cases and all that stuff. So that was a really long way to say probably not. I see a lot of people making boxes with them and all that stuff, but in my case, I think the ATEM Mini Pro will probably sit on this desk or similar desks pretty full term, and I won't really need to bring it anywhere in the coming months. Just a quick recap on a lot of people talking about Google API and explain what that's used for. And basically, if you want to get YouTube comments from YouTube, you have to use their API. And in order to use their API, you need an API key. And to get the API key, then you just need to go into the Google Developer Console and get one. So it's really the only way to officially get YouTube comments, the way I'm doing here, into H2R Graphics. But I'm more than happy to explain more about that to you later if you want to shoot me an email about it, no problem. Doug, I'm talking about you a lot today, but you said if you want an ATEM Mini or the Pro as soon as possible, you should find a smaller regional authorized seller and place your order right away. If you wait for the in-stock, you'll never get one. That's absolutely true. You should never wait for it to say in-stock. You should have already done that order. And yes, go to some regional, local, and give them a call and just ask. I think Aaron made a video about that too, but about getting an ATEM faster because you could just call a local place and ask them. I don't know if that's US specific, but I'm sure it's the same all over the world, where you can call someone local and they'll be happy for your business, and then you can get one a lot faster. And it's good to see you here, Doug. Actually, maybe we can, maybe I can get you on a show in the coming weeks. If people would like to see Doug on H2R live, then let me know in the YouTube comments or YouTube chat right now, actually, and maybe Doug will be forced to do it because we'll all ask him to do it here live. But we can chat about that later. But that would be cool. It'd be good to have you on. The time is slipping away from me. I started early today because I wanted to talk for a full hour. I wasn't sure if I would make it through a full hour without running out of things to say, but we're making it. And about 5 minutes to go until that hour happens. Or hour, if I was to pronounce it a little bit more properly. Let me see. Michael asks, are there any plans to add support for running H2R graphic keys on a different machine? Yes, definitely. This is all a part of a larger project where things like running on different machines and running better in vMix and OBS will all come together. It's just about time. Having time to work on that stuff. So, but if there's any JavaScript developers out there who want to help me, I'm not going to mention them, but this week I had someone help me on H2R Graphics. For the first time in as long as it's existed, someone else has contributed to H2R Graphics. So if there's any JavaScript developers out there, then send me an email and you can help out. It's something that I talked about open sourcing in the future, but I would like to talk to some people and do some work before we get to that point. And so send me an email, john@heretorecord.com, and we can definitely chat about that. And you can be the third person to help with H2R Graphics. Doug says, it would be fun to collaborate. Great to hear it. So we'll fix that. Yes, and Big G says yes to Doug. So there we go. I'm going to have to do it now, Doug. John, I did actually mention this last week, but I don't expect everyone to watch every YouTube live stream. But if you're using a client's YouTube channel, do you use your own or the client's API key? And the kind of beauty about the way I'm doing it in H2R Graphics is you just paste in a URL to any live show on YouTube. It doesn't have to be yours. In testing, I've been pasting in other people's live streaming URLs, and it all works just fine. So you just use your own API key. It's just fine. All it does is takes the YouTube ID and just checks if there's any YouTube comments on that ID. And Michael, you said that you are a software engineer and you can help. So there you go. We'll talk about this afterwards. If you don't mind, send me an email, then I'd like to chat about it for sure. White Dragon Miniatures. I thought that was your name for a second, but that would be one heck of a name. Integrate Facebook live chat to H2R Graphics. Yeah. I did chat about that a little bit earlier, but absolutely. I would love to do that for sure. Yes, Meetup Video UK. I know that's not your name. Hey John, do you think the new Blackmagic UltraStudio Mini monitor will act like an output for ATEM Mini Pro? That would be awesome. Peter. Oh yeah, see, that's your name, Peter. That would be actually pretty cool. So you could plug. So you could, in theory, I don't think this will work at all. But in theory, you could plug the new mini monitor into your ATEM Mini Pro's USB-C, and then that would give you a HDMI output. That would be really cool. I would like to see them do that. And then you could have a HDMI output from the ATEM Mini Pro. I would love to see that. I'm totally on board for that. I highly doubt it, but if they could make that work, that'd be really cool. Thomas, been a long time. I hope you're doing well. I'm interested to know your go-to audio gear when streaming. It actually varies pretty heavily. This week it is as low-key as possible. I have this microphone on a cable running on the floor all the way up into that camera over XLR, which is bringing it into the ATEM Mini Pro over HDMI. And that is what you can hear right now. So that is the least effort that I put into audio. Previous weeks I've used Behringer X18 or whatever it's called, and ran the microphone into that, and from there into the camera. So it's basically the same idea. One microphone into some sort of mixer usually, and then the mixer into the camera. But in this case, I just ran right in. I was going to set up a mixer, but I just realized I totally forgot to do that because I was shooting some videos before this and I had everything in place, and I just kind of kept it the way it was. So thanks for your question, and yeah, that was really appreciate people stopping by. Like I said, on a Thursday randomly, and I'm kind of shuffling the time around a bit just to see what works best for me, what works best for people. But for me, this is a pretty nice amount of people, a nice stream of chatting, so it's a good time for me. Is it a good time for you? It's really hard to say. If I look in the analytics, people are from all over the world watching YouTube or here to record videos, so it's difficult to pick a good time anyway. But I do appreciate you watching, and hopefully I can see you in the next week's stream. Maybe I'll have a guest, maybe not. And in the meantime, best of luck. And yeah, that was H2R Live. I'm just going to click on this little image here and say goodbye. Thank you. Bye.